Good evening from Wolfville and Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people, and welcome to African Heritage Month. In December 2021, Dr. Ricketts, president of the Acadia University, issued a response to the report of the President's Anti-Racism Task Force, known as PART. In his response, he says, in responding to the PART report, it is important that Acadia uses this moment in time to create real and lasting change. This means making strategic changes to how we make decisions, how we plan and coordinate our activities, and how we hold ourselves accountable for making progress towards our institutional goals and aspirations. The PART report lays out the core values that must underpin and drive anti-racism at Acadia. These core values start with Acadia University's motto, in Paul Ver Vince, through hard work you will conquer, and include reference to the principles of decolonization and the interests of dependent peoples in the Charter of the United Nations, principles of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission calls to action to redress the legacy of residential schools and advance the process of Canadian reconciliation, the principles in the UN Report on Canada for the International Decade for People of African Descent, accountability and the need to create systems and timeframes to report on progress of anti-racism work and actions, and to close identified gaps in a timely fashion. The mainstreaming of intersectional, feminist, decolonial, anti-oppressive lenses into university processes, and the principles enshrined in the UN Declaration of Human Rights regarding the fundamental human rights to be university protected. These are all core principles which Acadia University endorses and will uphold as we proceed on our journey towards truth and reconciliation and anti-racism. I'm delighted to be here this evening to share the unheard stories of Ruvimbo, Fikayo, and Sehkahnee. Thank you to the three of you for being with us. My name is Una Proudfoot, and I'm the Executive Director of Alumni Affairs in the Office of Advancement at Acadia. I'd like to set the stage for this evening's conversation by first playing Lift Every Voice, a hymn with lyrics by James Weldon Johnson and set to music by his brother, J. Brosman Johnson. In the early 1900s, Lift Every Voice was written from the context of African Americans in the late 19th century and is a prayer of thanksgiving for faithfulness and freedom.
Bring with the heart.
And finally, before we begin our conversation with our invited guests, this is a safer space. No space is entirely safe for anyone from anyone. I will ask that anyone here this evening be here in a respectful manner and with listening ears. Further to that, I encourage you all to think about our own ability to learn, grow, and affect change. It is our work to do. These guests are with us this evening to create awareness for us and to help us understand the situation better and understand why change needs to happen. The stories and experiences shared here this evening go beyond things that happen and are not thought about again. They affect the lives and health of our Black students and community members. They affect abilities to form connections with others and often with themselves. It's more than news. There is so much realness that can only be felt and experienced by the person who has gone through racism or anyism or prejudice. It is our hope that sharing this perspective will help members of the audience hear and listen and be able to delve into yourselves as contributors in this system. I'll briefly introduce our guests this evening, as I hope that they will take some time once I stop talking to tell us more about themselves. Additionally, their extended bio is located on our website. So joining us this evening, we have Fikayo Kayode, class of 2022. Fikayo is a fourth-year politics student with a minor in philosophy. Born in the capital city of Abuja, Nigeria, Fikayo lived there until she was 14 years old, when she moved to the Philippines with her mother and younger brother. When Fikayo was 16, she came to Canada to start her university education at Acadia and became the first in her family to do so. Sehkahnee Reynolds graduated from Acadia University in 2018 with a Bachelor of Arts in Sociology. During his time at Acadia, he played football for the Axemen, ran track, DJ'd, co-founded the Black Student Association with Dina Williams, and led the Step Up movement at Acadia, a sexual assault awareness program. He was also part of a Black panel to help create a more diverse and inclusionary community on campus. Born in Toronto and raised in Brampton, Ontario, Sehkahnee is a proud Jamaican Canadian. Upon graduation, Sehkahnee has called Wolfville his home and is the sole proprietor of a local business. And Ruvimbo Chipazi, class of 2021. A former international student from Zimbabwe and is currently the campus tours and events coordinator at Acadia. While pursuing a BSc in applied psychology, Ruvimbo worked as a student assistant and later development assistant in the Office of Advancement, igniting her pride for Acadia University and wanting to make it more inclusive and safe space for students. She volunteered as associate director to the president's office. She became the arts and culture editor and later editor-in-chief for the Athenaeum, becoming the first Black editor-in-chief in the newspaper's 144-year history. Ruvimbo also served as student assistant and ambassador program coordinator for the Wong International Center. She volunteered with SMILE program, the Valley Regional Hospital Foundation, and the Young Leaders Council. In 2019, Ruvimbo received the Future 100 Leaders of Nova Scotia distinction and was honored with the Student of the Year award. We welcome engagement in the conversation through asking questions and ask that you either raise your hand or post your questions or comments in the chat function. And we've entered your names, all of your names in a draw, and we'll announce the winner at the end of the discussion. The winner will receive a copy of Dr. Don Oliver's book, A Matter of Equality, the first book being highlighted in our newly launched Alumni Book Club. So enough from me, and thank you for your patience with me. I'm going to start by asking each of our invited guests to tell us a little bit about yourselves. I've just read your bio, and it just really skims the surface. So I'll ask you one at a time, and I'll let you know in what order, and just share with us some thoughts, some comments about who you are and how you've landed where you are here this evening and in Wolfville. So why don't we start with Fikayo?
Thank you, Una. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining today. And thanks again, Una, for that wonderful introduction. Yeah, apart from everything that Una's already said about me, my name is Fikayo. I'm graduating in May, hopefully. I do a couple of things on campus. I am the Black Student Association president, and I'm also the art senator for the ASU. Really, I thrive in advocacy. In advocacy for groups that are, less privileged, sometimes have their voices less heard, or just need to be more at the forefront of things, of movements. Aside that, and when school requirements don't demand a lot of me, I like to read novels, realistic fiction, just different genres that I find interesting. I bead, hang out with friends, and trying to make the most of my time left in undergrad. So yeah.
Thank you, Fikayo, and thank you again for joining us. Over to you, Sehkahnee. You're up next.
Okay, how's everybody doing? I'm Sehkahnee. Came here 2014. Came from Champlain College. Went to the States for a little bit, but realized that was too expensive. Then went to Quebec, played in Champlain, and then came to Wolfville. Um, my journey to Wolfville was very interesting because I didn't actually see the campus. I just seen that they were offering me money, so I was like, you know what, let's secure that bag. Um, and then I came here, realized that there was a strong need for a Black Student Association with Dina, so we started that. There was not a very strong diversity force, like everybody was just clicked together. So we started our own little thing to bring diverse students together. And then I stayed around because I have a barbershop in town. So that is my reason why I'm still here.
Thank you, Sehkahnee, and we are glad you are still here. Ruvimbo, you're up.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm Ruvimbo, and I'm from Zimbabwe, as Una mentioned. Um, how I found myself here in Wolfville in this cold, snowy place when I grew up in a desert was my brother's an alum, and he told me that X-Men Pride has no equal, and I just went off his words. I didn't even see the campus as well, and just came here and I think it's because I really wanted to experience snow in real life. But I'd say that I fell in love with the place when I started to connect with people in the community, not just like the student community, but also alumni. A lot of the stories that they shared just kind of like, I wanted to be able to share such stories like when I'm older and like come back to Acadia for like some reunion or something. And I just noticed that for a lot of students, they kind of just want to get their degree and leave, not really fully like invest in the experience of Acadia. And I'm curious. I really wanted to understand why. And I just found myself getting deeper and deeper involved in Acadia, and I'm so grateful for all the experiences that I've had, and I look forward to where Acadia is going. But yes, I like to read. Um, I like a lot of anime. I love art, um, and video games. But yes, I'm very introverted and quiet, but I have a voice, especially when it's needed.
Terrific, Ruvimbo. Thank you. So I've got a series of questions. Some are directed at a particular individual, one of you in particular, based on the question that I'm asking. And some of them are for all of you to answer if you wish, weigh in when you wish. And by all means, feel free to go off script. So if there's a message that you want to share at some point in time, please feel free to do that as well. I feel like I can't go any further without acknowledging that Fikayo joined the conversation and said, "You look very Christmassy." And I was like, "I'm wearing the colors of the Pan-African flag. That's what I was going for." So if I look Christmassy, that was not the intention. So my first question to each of you, and you can answer if each of you would like to weigh in, what were your thoughts and reactions when I approached you about having this conversation this evening?
Y'all want to go first? You want me to
Go
go?
ahead, Sehkahnee. Thank you.
Um, Based off like what I usually do, like talking in front of people is not really my thing. So I don't know much about it for the ladies, but I was just like, sure. I guess I could do that. But like it's good to share your experience because a lot of people might be going through the same thing that we went through, but because we don't tell anybody else our stories, it can't really impact them and they won't really know how to deal. So I guess it was just like might as well just do it. Plus it's Black History Month, so like got it.
Wonderful. And you know, we had a conversation about the title of this evening's conversation and it being unspoken stories. And we, as a group, very quickly got to the point of, no, often the stories are spoken, they're just unheard. So that's why we wanted to go with that word and really appreciate you contributing, Sehkahnee. Ruvimbo or Fikayo?
I was honestly a little bit anxious when I read the email, simply because I've had a lot of challenges at Acadia, and I was just like, oh my gosh, am I going to have to relive my trauma or something like that? And then I realized that this is part of the healing process, and also just sharing the things that helped me overcome. And yeah, you never know who's listening. Like, if it helps, it helps. And I was just like, yes, I'd like to do that.
And likewise, Ruvimbo, appreciate you being here and certainly don't want to revisit anything that you don't want to revisit. So feel free to share whatever it is you're comfortable sharing. And Fikayo?
Yes, thank you. Like Ruvimbo, I was anxious as well when I read that email, simply because, you know, these kind of lived experiences are hard to like detail and talk about again and again, and having experiences of like being tokenized and people just sort of just that's all they want to hear. But then I thought to myself, you know, even amidst everything in like a negative sense, there are still ways that I can use this my experience to bring something positive out of it. And like we've all collectively said, you never know who's listening. And I can speak from a growing up in an African in a Black household perspective where you're sort of told to, you know, just keep these things to yourself because very soon it's going to be over and that's going to be the end of it. But excuse me, sorry, a lot of times it doesn't pan out that way because, you know, these are like life experiences and it doesn't end when someone calls you a slur or someone says something. You keep thinking about it over and over and over again. And so, yeah, when I got that email, I first of all second guessed. I was like, do I want to do this? And then eventually I said, you know what? Yeah. And again, just stressing the importance of the title, definitely spoken stories, just a lot of times unacknowledged or acknowledged, but there's nothing done about it, you know? And just stressing the importance that this is sort of like, and there's been numerous wake up calls for people to really delve into themselves and, you know, ask themselves hard questions and be uncomfortable with certain truths about the world that we live in and actions that people take and make. Yeah.
You know, and thank you, Fikayo, for joining the conversation. And when you know, when you explain that, and you and I have had a couple of conversations, Ruvimbo and I, certainly Sehkahnee and I over the years, we've known each other a while, Sehkahnee. For you to say, you know, to listen to the lived experiences and listen to the stories, you know, it wasn't that long ago that I finally got to a stage where I understood what first voice meant. And I understood that when someone is telling me about an experience that they've had in their lived world, that I need to listen, that there are perspectives that I'm not getting in any number of variables, any number of demographics, whatever word you want to use. And so first voice is incredibly important, and appreciating each of you willing to contribute to this conversation so that we can listen and learn. So I believe that all of you have been involved with the Black Student Association, whether as a founder, a chair, a president, a member. Wondering if one or all of you can tell us a little bit about the association. Maybe start with you, Sehkahnee, as one of the co-founders, and tell us a little bit about the association and its purpose. For those of us wondering what the Black Student Association at Acadia does, how it can help, can anyone belong? All of those questions.
All right. You don't want to hit the president first? Like you've been holding that chair for a little bit lately.
It was a toss-up. Do I ask do I ask the founder first or do I ask the current president first? I don't know.
The Black Student Association was like it's supposed to give people the opportunity to like realize that they're not alone on campus, even though the campus is very scattered when it comes to color. It was just able to put up events that's just like a games night or bringing our people together to like give them a voice and then share it and then have events and like the campus on like the cultural aspect out of it because it's not just like Canadian. So we'll have different events and different things to like educate the campus, I guess, in order to say that. And then, but still, in order to celebrate each other's victories and losses together, you know. I don't know if Fikayo wants to expand on that, but
Yes, sure, Sehkahnee. Yeah, nothing short of what you said. Heavy on the a space for us to celebrate victories and losses, even because they do happen. And I think my experience being president, I've been president since last school year, fall, so a year now. And it really is just a space for advocacy, for us to have a space where we can, we can enter other spaces within advocacy. And they say there's strength in numbers, and just having all of us, believe in one thing and going into like there's boards, there's committees where the president, which is myself, or other executive members sit on, and just being able to speak, voice our concerns as Black students is very, very important. And again, the campus is scattered in terms of colors, and we're all in our like little cliques of friends. And I think the VSA is one of those spaces where we can all just come together wherever you're from and have a good time. And there's been, since COVID, we've been doing virtual events as well, and they have been challenging, but in the end, we have some wins and we have some losses. And the good events, they're done, and we all just sort of come together and have a good time. And yeah.
Thank you. Anything to add, Ruvimbo?
Yes, actually. I am an unofficial member of the Black Students Association. I never actually like signed up for it. I just, when it was created, I really do live in my head and like focus on like things that I'm like really focused on. And I really did not realize that it was made until people started asking me if I'm part of the Black Students Association, because I was just involved in campus. And I was just like, no. And I was just like, oh, but that sounds pretty cool. And yeah, it was just so beautiful to see it grow, because when I came, it wasn't there. And then the events, they started out small, but the conversation was just so amazing. And I learned a lot, and I just loved it. I loved the momentum it got ever since it started. So I'm a proud member who never really signed up.
An ex officio member? I don't know what that is. So, Ruvimbo, that's a great segue into a question that I'd like to pose of you, if I may. And you referenced a little bit in your introduction about some of your challenges in your term, in your time as a student. And I'm wondering if you'll tell us a little bit about supports that were available to you and to Black students in our very white town, if there are any, and areas where there aren't supports that are necessary.
That is a very big question. And okay, thinking back to it, the honest truth is that I did not really see any support for Black students on campus. But there were supports. Strange as that sounds. For example, the Wong International Center, it wasn't, they were there because I was an international student. The coordinator at the time, Carissa, was an amazing support. When I had issues with my department, she was able to direct me to the Diversity and Inclusivity Office. That was new during like my time at Acadia, and that was also awesome, a lovely support. I reached out to alumni actually, and Una, you're the one who put me in contact with James Sanford, and I didn't even think about going there. And I was able to talk to him and just explain my whole situation. And he was also able to support me in a serious manner. Like, that man is amazing. I talked to Ian Murray about my situations, and he directed me towards the Paulo, his title, I forget. I forget his title really, but I know it had something African in it or Black, one or the other. But he directed me to him, and that was an amazing support. But my two biggest supports I will point out were the counseling center and accessible learning. The counseling center, it wasn't a smooth run for sure. There's a trial and error with like dealing with counselors, having that, fostering that relationship. And like, nobody wants to go to therapy and kind of like have to explain cultural norms, why you would do this different from a Canadian, how you would react differently. And I did find that a lot of times, but I kept on going. My mom's a psychologist, so I always knew that therapy is always the way, it's the key, it's normalized in my family. So I just kept on trying, and I met the perfect counselor, Julia. She was amazing. And I went there throughout my whole years at Acadia, only to realize that she was a second generation immigrant, and that kind of like clicked, that there's that understanding, that cultural aspect. It's not all my culture. It's not, she wasn't there to like say she understood everything, but she supported me. She made me not feel so alone. And so I guess the greatest support I got was the connections I made. Because through those connections, the immediate people weren't able to help me with my situations, but they were able to guide me to places I could find support and help. And that's the biggest thing. I'm worried that a lot of students right now, a lot of international Black students, don't have those connections to connect them to the right supports. They're not aware of the supports that are there. There's a genuine lack of information spreading that goes on that I witnessed. And I really don't know what I would have done if I didn't speak up to a person that I trusted about my situation.
Right. Ruvimbo, do you mean it's extra hard right now because of the pandemic and isolation? Was that the reference, or do you mean in other regards, if I may ask?
In other regards, because I would say the pandemic, but when the pandemic hit, I was already connected with these support systems and was talking with them. So it wasn't much of a challenge for me to get connected with them.
Okay.
But this is prior to the pandemic.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned Paulo, and he is his position, and you're right, I can't remember exactly, but Janique Els is on the line with us this evening, and she is in that position now. So certainly if we have an opportunity at the end, we'd love for her to say hello or pop in anytime, Janique. Fikayo and Sehkahnee, anything to add to the question that I posed to Ruvimbo and Ruvimbo's comments?
Yes, if I may.
Please.
Okay. Yeah, certainly. That you brought up Janique, because I was going to talk about her as one of the supports I've been able to go to as of like starting this year. Janique has been so helpful in numerous ways. And I think that also comes from her being an alumni as well and having lived that student experience specifically here at Acadia. She's just understanding. And again, as Ruvimbo said, James Sanford is such a well-connected man that will help you. And she is, I think she works closely with him, and, you know, they're able to gather supports when you need, whether it's personal, whether it's something that has to do with the university, just a general all-around help. Another place where I have found support, strangely, is like faith, in whatever like faith or religion that you believe in. And that is something that I've held on to, that has also sort of held on to me, just as, you know, the days go, just having that, just believing in something that, you know, you push forward and something is there that's watching and that's helping you go through it all. Yeah, and even with everything, you have friends that understand your circumstance, as Ruvimbo said, people that you can trust, that you can open up to in certain ways. And I think those connections are really important. And I pray that everyone can experience that at some point in their life with a friend that you can really just talk to. And even if sometimes you both don't know the answers, like you're both Black, you're both really just trying to navigate this town, this world, this experience, but at least there's somebody that makes you feel that you're not alone, you know? And, you know, as much as I've had interesting experiences in this town, there are some experiences with people, random people that I've never met or seen before that make me go, oh, you know, there's hope in this world. And all of that. So yeah, some town folk have been really helpful, and Wolfville's really small, so sometimes you see them every other day, and you know, it just sort of like brightens up your day seeing someone that you had a chat with a couple of days ago. Um, yeah.
Thank
So,
you. Yeah, and Sehkahnee, I wonder, in answering the question, if you could touch a little bit on your experience as an athlete.
Um, well, the athlete experience here is like it's a lot different than like in the big city because it's so community based. It's not just like you come here, you're playing, and then you're not interacting with all the younger generations or the kids that are coming up. So like the kids are watching you, and then they'll go to your games, and you'll go to their camps, and then it builds a whole community where they're already talking based off of like what I do in the shop as well with like my back to school programs. I still get to interact with them. So like there's still that like connection for people who don't have that same role model experience that's been there, been in the same predicament that you've been in, but they don't know how to navigate or they don't know what schools to go to or what trainings to do or what process to really to push themselves to the next level. So it's nice having a role model that you could actually talk to and just sit and like actually pick at their brain to like where do I go from here? You know, like because everyone's just like, oh, I want to be this. I want to go to this school. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. What are you doing to get to that school? Oh, nothing. How's that? It doesn't really correlate, right? So like being able to be like giving someone that little extra boost has always been a very effective thing. And I'm mostly free speaking, so like I would tell kids the honest truth sometimes, and that's it helps because like they'll break down when they get real comfortable in the shop as well, so they're free to talk about their issues. It also helps.
So, Sehkahnee, I want to hear a little bit more about that if we can. So the athletic reference you made, and then I was going to spread the question asking around a little bit and come back to my question to you about a business owner in Wolfville, but you mentioned it with the back to school program. So if you wouldn't mind, tell us a little bit about what it's like to be a business owner in Wolfville. Maybe a little bit about why you decided to stay in Wolfville and open your business and run some of the programs that you run in your barber shop, and also barriers that you faced as a business owner, a Black business owner in Wolfville.
Okay. Um. Well, Buffalo needed a barbershop because honestly, you couldn't be going down the street and getting your hair chopped up. It's not a good look. People take a lot of pride in their hair and the way they look. So having a place in town that they could just say, you know what, let me go get fixed up. That's what you need, you know. It's needed in any type of town. So having that was just like, why not? I'm not bad at what I do, so I might as well just, you know, set up a little place for myself. And it was interesting because when my little man came in the summer, he got to experience and see that I made something for myself, which was actually like he's just like, oh, this is actually your shop. Your name's on the wall, and he's so excited. And you see how that inspires young like kids coming to my shop and be like, oh, I want to start a business now. I'm just like, that's amazing. Like, what type of business you want to start? And some will be like, I'm starting up to sell shoes or like something along the lines, but they want to build their own, which sets off that little like, okay, cool. I see why it's working, you know, giving back and talking to them about like when someone comes into my shop, especially a kid, I like to talk to them about like investing and putting their money and saving and like just getting their mind on financial literacy just so they can start dabbling in it. So it's like it opens doors for them, right? So when they're, because a lot of the times in the Black community, we don't really touch financial literacy. We don't touch on things that are actually impactful to our lives. We just go, okay, you got to go to work, you got to go to school, and then you get a job. But that's not really living life. So it's like you gotta find a thing that's your own niche and like brings you your happiness, and that can be impactful for yourself, you know. So that's why I really started that business in Wolfville. And the back to school program, I took social and the community engagement has always been a big factor in my life. So if I could navigate at least one child or one youth to do something better than what I've already did, or if I see someone on the path that they're going through and I'm like, that path looks a little shaky. Maybe you should just come over here and just like avoid certain things. Then you could be like, all right, let's work with that, you know? Let's try to give you more positive impacts than negatives. So that's why I keep continue to like push towards giving the community outreach.
And the last part of that question, Sehkahnee, was barriers that you may have faced in starting your business.
Probably just finding a good location. That was really tough because we started off in Railtown and then I was like in the back of the dikes, and it was an okay location, but because it was so far behind everything else, no one really wanted to come there. And you got to get promo, and you got to get so finding the location where we're at, right beside BMO on that side street, it just helps open up so many doors because people just walk to the liquor store like, oh, there's a barbershop here, and it's just like, oh yeah, for sure. And I have that little persona where I just like if I see you looking rough, I'll call you out and like, hey, come see me, because that's just that's just who I am. So like being able to be bold enough to like actually talk to random people and be like, hey, I'm not dissing you, but like that haircut, come, come let me help you out. And it helps because like that connection that you have with people, it brings people like such a good feeling and makes them feel so good when they actually have a good haircut. It makes them so prideful that they forget certain things in the shop when they leave because they're like, my haircut looks so good. It doesn't matter. People leave their bags, their hats, things like that, and it's just like you feel so good because it's just like just a little haircut, or it could be someone's therapy, someone's marriage counselor. It's just a very impactful position.
I'm sitting here breathing a sigh of relief that you've never said that to me. So I'm thinking, okay, I must be doing
Listen,
okay. I'm doing okay.
I don't want that type of pressure on myself. A woman's hair is a totally different thing. I'll let y'all do your thing.
Joking aside, so Fikayo, a question for you. And
Ruvimbo got her hand up.
I'm sorry. Oh, sorry, Ruvimbo. Go ahead.
I was not sure how to say it, but I just wanted to add something to what Sehkahnee said.
Please.
A lot of people here might not like understand like relaxed hair versus like natural black hair. And I came to this university with relaxed hair, so I need my hair to be like maintained by a professional after certain months. And I went to all the salons here in Wolfville, like walking with my friend, asking if they could do my hair. And they were honest that they couldn't do my hair. My friends tried to help me, but we're not professionals. And my hair was just so bad, and I was just like, I'm gonna cut it off. And Sehkahnee cut my hair, and he lined me up, and I realized why you never line up a woman's hair. I went through a very interesting phase because of my hair, but I appreciated Sehkahnee cutting my hair. It kind of just started a whole chapter in my life at Acadia.
Community connections, right? Fikayo, tell us a little bit about your student experiences, and whatever you're willing to share in terms of some of those stories, some of the bad things, some of the good things, with your experiences in Wolfville so far. Just kind of a bit of an open slate for you to share whatever you're willing.
Okay, thank you. My experiences have been very multifaceted in a lot of ways. While I have been opportune to get a lot of, opportunities and positions at Acadia, they have not come without, sort of me struggling for some of them, having to, shout louder than some of my peers who don't have the same identities as me, plainly put, who aren't Black. Yeah, and in Wolfville as well, I think a lot of times when, like with Black students, I think that point where we really start to rethink a lot of things is when, you push on again, you start to have hope in yourself and in things around, and somehow things just seem to fill you in a sense that, like I remember I was at an office in Acadia, I won't say where, but I was somewhere, and I went to get something from someone that I needed for a presentation. This was, I was working a job for Acadia at that point. This was later in the summer last year. And I approached the service person and they just blatantly refused to say my name. And that specific day, I was giving a talk on anti-racism and, anti-prejudice and stuff like that. And I was, really hyped. I was anxious, but really hyped for it at the same time. And just that refusal to say my name. And they had pointed it out saying, I don't know how to say your name, so I'm not even going to try. That was the statement that came out of their mouth. And it really just, I don't know, I started crying when I left. I just sort of like stormed out, collected what I needed, and I left. And it's things like that that just bring your spirits down. And, a small interaction like that, he did not even need to say my name, but for him to point it out, to say that he will not try to say my name as if I was a nameless person was just really something that affected me to the depths of me. And, these things seem really small. I thought to myself, why does this affect me so much? But then when they happen constantly and people keep saying these things to you, it definitely hits differently. Yeah, that's that. And in the town, just random conversations with people who, and this is why I really appreciate you stressing before we started, Una, that, these experiences aren't just news. Random people who talk about, this war that's going on in this country, this movement that's going on in this part of the African continent. And it's like, these are situations that I have lived in and that my family has lived in. Why do you find this to be an appropriate first conversation, asking me about a war that's going on in my country? Just little things like that that really remind you of your position in a white town are very significant. And as you go along, you may not really realize how much these things impact you. And then you take a step back sometimes, if you can take a step back from everything and think about it. And yeah.
Fikayo, really appreciate you sharing that example, and those examples, I should say, and a word that many people may not be familiar with is the word microaggression, and your reference to, these are little things, but they're not little things. But for the person delivering it, it probably does seem like such a minor thing. It's just I'm not going to bother with your name because it's clearly a name I haven't seen before. So, we'll just move on. So talk to me, either one of you, if you're willing, a little bit about sort of that scenario of those microaggressions adding up and adding up and adding up. But also, if you wouldn't mind helping us understand microaggression in general. A lot of people don't understand that comments like that are received in such a way that are difficult to process and difficult to, you said you were in tears. Don't blame you, obviously, in any way, shape, or form, but wondering how much of a reflection that person had on that particular scenario. Likely none. So just help a little bit in explaining what examples of microaggression look like and how they add up.
Okay, thank you. Yes, it was interesting because when I left, the service person actually called the office I was working for and apologized. And I was taken aback because then I wondered, oh, so you know that what you did was wrong. And it's just really funny because a lot of times these things are very unnecessary. And I don't know why people think it's okay to say certain things, but it's just not, and they're unnecessary to say. Microaggressions are not micro. when they build up to a certain extent, they certainly are not small things. They then become like overt acts of racism at a certain point. And oh man, I'm going to let Sehkahnee go. I can't.
Oh my goodness.
Thank you.
There's so many. You could be in the Ville and be like, "Do you sell drugs?" Um, there, oh my gosh. Sorry.
I don't know,
Oh,
Sehkahnee, but there you go. Okay.
So you could be in the Ville, people be like, "Do you sell drugs?" And it's just like, "Oh, very weird." Like that's just cause, and it's just like little things like that. That is going on. And then there's like in the shop, people have very entitled feelings. Like they'll try to tell you exactly what to do or what time to do it, and it's just like you realize it's my name on the wall. Like you can skedaddle. I'm with all the smoke. So like if you really want to get it personal, like we could don't you can't come into my shop and try to boss me around and be entitled, be like tell me how to do my job when it's my shop. I mean things like that though. They feel that because let's say certain white people feel like because they were raised here or something, they feel that they're better than the people that come here. So they feel that we should like give them, how do I say this politically correct without hurting anyone's feelings? Um, some people are very full of themselves and they like to talk to you or direct you in a certain way. And a lot of people's feelings will get hurt if they're like if you're in a class at Acadia, for example, and they talk about anything about black people, everybody in the class is looking directly at you because they feel like you could voice the opinion for every single black person there is, which makes absolutely no sense, right? So little things like that that you have to deal with constantly on a daily basis in class or any issues that have to do with race. They're always, oh, I didn't know. I had many debates about police brutality, about many things, especially in social classes. And people would always be like, oh, the police are so fine, but they're doing foolishness. And they're just like, how, so you're training racism? That's crazy. Like you want to talk about it? Like the racism that we deal with is not, it's not accidental. It's not just like, oh, this is gonna happen once in a lifetime. You know, just because you don't see it every day doesn't mean it's not happening. Things that happen in Wolfville all the time based off the police and one of one of the black community members just dealt with something in in Wolfville. So like shout out to Sarah with her fighting, getting into that fight, whoop that ass. But like it was great. But like at the same time, you can see how the mayor even sent her a text and said that it wasn't that serious. That's kind of crazy because if it happened to any one of your kids, then it would have been an issue, right? So putting aside the fact that we're not really seen as like people who have feelings or people who that need to specify on what we are actually on, it kind of infuriates people, especially when you're just like, oh, just get over it, it'll be okay. It's just another thing. Just get over it. It's fine. It happened years ago. I was like, okay.
Yeah.
So like that's my little piece on it. I'm not gonna try to get riled up.
Well, Sehkahnee, and appreciate your willingness to share and your honesty. And that's exactly why we wanted to have this conversation this evening. And we need to have many, many more of these conversations. And the examples that you gave and reference to a very recent example leads me to a question that I'm going to pose. I'm going to ask Fikayo to take a chance at it first, and that's simply because you and I had a bit of a preliminary conversation about it, and that's thoughts on people's attitudes and responses towards being called out on acts of racism, whether unconscious or not, and that word racist and the connotations that it brings with it.
Okay, thank you for that. You froze a bit there, so I hope that I got most of the question, but I think I understand because we did have that conversation. And yes, I want to quote, first of all, quote one of my favorite Black authors. His name is Ibram X. Kendi. And he goes, being called racist is not inherently an insult or a slur. And I think it's very important for people to understand this because then it becomes less of a personal attack on someone's character when they say, oh, what you did was racist, or what you did was a microaggression. You shouldn't have done this. You shouldn't have said this. Any form of prejudice or ism in general. And in that way, you learn how to learn, because I think the process of learning is itself a learning when it comes to issues like these. And yeah, I think that's very important for people to understand that racism is it can be conscious and it can be unconscious, and a lot of times it is unconscious, and sometimes you don't know that you're perpetuating a certain stereotype about a certain group of people, and whether it's on purpose or not, when you're called out on something, what you're supposed to do is just listen and be like, oh, okay, well, I didn't realize that it can come off like this. Next time, what can I do? Or don't even ask, educate yourself. There's Google. We Black people, we don't exist to serve as, the education for people who are not aware about things like these. Yes, we can if we want to, but that's not our sole purpose of existing. Please do not walk up to random Black people and ask them to tell you about their life and to teach you about these things, because there's more than enough resources. I just quoted one of them. There's books, there's podcasts, there's movies, there's so much, like Netflix, documentaries, there's so much that you can look at from history, from happenings today. From the case that Sehkahnee just mentioned, it's crazy because a lot of times you sort of quote unquote get over these things, and then you're met with situations like these again where it feels like people do not want you around. And I was privy to what happened at the station, and it was basically the officer just saying, if you don't want to be here, then you are welcome to leave. And it's statements like these that make you feel unwanted in spaces when you think, okay, this is fine. I can create a space for myself with my community, with my friends. And then you hear things like these from people who are supposed to be on your side, and then you realize, oh wait, maybe not. So yeah, those are my thoughts.
Thank you, Fikayo. Sehkahnee.
Tying into that, there's another example that I completely forgot about that I just reminded. One of the social profs, what's her name, Heather? She said the N word in class, and then Acadia said that she retired instead of telling the truth that, hey, they had a racist prof into the facility teaching these kids about social. So I was like, things like that where you're just like, let me throw it under the rug so we could get our reputation and be like, oh, it's okay, Acadia's so great. But when reality, things like that are happening and it's not even getting hit to the higher ups or to the rest of the department, it's complete bullshit, right? It just shows how much people actually care about minorities. Like Acadia loves to say that they want diversity and they want to be full impacted and everything. And everything is all cool until it's time to actually take action, because then they're all silent. But other than that, you said you look like you wanted to say something, but go ahead.
Actually, with what you said, I feel like Acadia does have a problem when it comes to its focus so much on its image, and us Black students, we understand everything that's going on, we're in university for a reason. It's being not afraid to acknowledge that there's a problem and an issue. Like, that's not going to be the end of Acadia. Like, when Acadia actually shows that it's putting in the right effort, making genuine steps forward, that's how you restore the faith within your minority groups on campus. That's how you create that inclusivity where it's, okay, this bad thing happened, we're going to just move on because we can, right? being honest about what that bad thing was, having genuine conversations, no matter how difficult they are. One thing I noticed was it was hard for a lot of not just administration, but also domestic Canadian students, white Canadian students, to talk about matters of race, racism, and all that because they're so afraid of offending me. And for me, it just makes me, I feel awkward when I see how awkward this conversation's making you feel. It's my reality. Why are you uncomfortable? Why can't you handle the conversation? You get to walk away from it. I will live with this. I will live with this, what this is going to do to me. A lot of people don't understand the impacts of racism. It's not just a once-off thing. You'll remember it. You see somebody walk. I've had instances, and this is one thing I always come to. I was walking down the street. It was late at night, not late, 7, 8. It was dark, and this white lady, I see her like grabbing her purse tighter and like moving it to the other side, and like I did a double take. I was just like, do I look sketchy? I was just like I was just like, do I look intimidating, menacing? I'm not the tallest person. And I was just baffled. And now sometimes when I think of walking out in the evening, I think like, am I wearing too much black? Like, am I, because it's not a nice feeling when you think, you wonder why did that person do that? There've been instances where I noticed that professors, white Canadian professors, are more comfortable and willing to talk more with white Canadian students. I love education. I crave that relationship with my professors. And it was only in a sociology department, Dr. Zara Sumi, she called me one of her peeps. And I was so delighted. I was just like, this PhD woman is calling me her peeps. It was just that that genuine like connection, that openness, like you're free to be you. You don't have to tone yourself down. You don't have to present your blackness in a pretty package that I can consume. It was just that, like, it's okay to be you, and what you experience doesn't scare me, doesn't make me uncomfortable. It's a human experience,
Mm-hmm.
Acadia just needs to be more comfortable with just listening to the realness, like truly like sitting in there and saying that we have a problem. How can we fix it? Not a band-aid fix, because I see those band-aid fixes. We see them. But we want genuine change, There's a reason Sehkahnee is still here. There's a reason I'm still here. Like, I was just like, I'm done with Acadia. I'm gonna leave. My mom told me don't throw the baby with the bathwater. There's something special at Acadia, but I don't want my love for Acadia to end before things get right, I want to come back 50 years down the line, be like, yeah, this is my alma mater,
Ruvimbo, Fikayo, Sehkahnee, so much of what you have said this evening lends itself to further conversations, lends itself to messaging that we collectively as a university need to work on. Ruvimbo, you use the words, it's my reality. And that first voice that I referred to earlier, and listening to lived experiences. And you're right, Acadia is a great place. We've got a lot of growing to do. And the fact that we have members in our alumni community like you and Sehkahnee, and current students like you, Fikayo, who are willing to share your opinions, your experiences, is wonderful for us as an institution. For me as an individual, I've enjoyed all of my conversations with you, Fikayo. We're a new relationship, so we've got many more conversations to have. But I have a lot of hope, and I have a lot of hope, and it's because of people like you who are here still and helping. And as I say, being honest being honest and sharing your experience. And I truly, truly hope that we as an institution, that we as individuals within the institution, that we as individuals in the town of Wolfville, but broadly speaking as well, that we as people in society are going to do a much better job of listening, of hearing and listening, right? Not just, sort of, yeah, I heard that story and you'll get over it, but hearing those stories and taking time to debrief them, analyze them, realize what it's like for it to be your lived reality, and to do a better job of understanding. So, we're at our time. I'm not surprised. I knew an hour wasn't going to be enough. Of course, an hour isn't enough. There's a lot more work to do, a lot more conversations to be had. And I hope that we, institutionally, continue to have these conversations far and beyond outside of African Heritage Month. Great place to start, great stage to use to have the conversations, sure, but to continue to have them, and advocacy, to go back to your word, Fikayo, and to be an advocate, all of us, and more so those of us who don't have the lived experiences to have to help with the voice and to help with the advocacy. So I can't thank you enough. I suppose, it's such a silly expression when you think about it. I can't thank you enough. Well, why don't you try? Thank you. Thank you to the three of you for being here this evening. Early on in African Heritage Month, we've got another event later in the month where we'll be interviewing Dr. Don Oliver, who wrote the book, A Matter of Equality. Fantastic rendition of his experience as a young Black man growing up in Wolfville and going to Acadia in the 50s and 60s, and then went on to a very illustrious career in a number of different areas. So a really neat experience to be reading that book and hearing another lived experience. Thank you to everybody who joined us this evening. Please, by all means, we didn't get to the comment box. I do apologize. I was trying to keep an eye out. There are some comments there, so I invite our guest speakers to have a look at the conversations, or the comments rather. And just to say, please join us in our next event. Please consider joining the book club and sharing in Dr. Don Oliver's experience with us. And I will see Fikayo regularly in the next little while for sure. Sehkahnee, love to see you on the streets and in your shop. And Ruvimbo, thank you so much for being with us this evening.